Hello everyone. This video accompanies the learning module on the Modern School. There's a few things I'd like to cover in terms of larger historical background that supplement what we have to read this week. First, I'll talk a little bit about kindergarten, the rise of kindergarten. It's a German term, child garden. The principle behind it was that it was supposed to be a safe place for young children, very early age children, to learn and explore the world. It's very much originated with a German philosopher, particularly Friedrich, I'll spell this, F-R-I-E-D-R-I-C-H, Froebel, F-R-O-B-E-L. Lived in the 1800s. He was a scientist, but also an observer of children. He was one of the first people to really begin to put or infuse psychology into understanding children. Up to this point, children were largely treated as or considered to be just small adults. And for those of us who have children, I think we understand very well that we cannot treat children like small adults. They don't have the same cognitive processes, the same ability to understand the world, and that this changes over time through age. He was a very good, keen understander of that idea. He did not want to treat children like small adults. They understand the world and perceive it very differently. So he wanted to use discovery and play as a way for children to explore the world and understand the world. Early support for kindergarten schools was low at best. By 1890, there were about 30,000 children in kindergartens in the United States. But the idea took off and really grew very quickly, so that within 10 years, by 1900, there were approximately 210,000 children still in kindergarten. Still only a small segment of the population, but you can see how the idea really began to take root. Another area we look at this week, development of the high schools. By the mid-1800s, there have been high schools developed in Massachusetts, New York. Some of these, even without the support of legislation, cities and towns began to establish them themselves in some cases, providing education for the common good. Although the practice was still questioned before the Civil War. The principle or the precedent to establish high schools came as a result of the Kalamazoo case. K-A-L-A-M-A-Z-O-O. Kalamazoo case, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 1872. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and look up, it's an old swing song from the 40s, I Got a Gal in Kalamazoo. I'm not going to sing it because you don't really want to hear my voice like that, especially when I have a cold. The Kalamazoo case, 1872, Michigan. The city, Kalamazoo, appropriated funds to build a high school. One resident criticized the plan to use taxpayer money for purposes other than elementary schools, and the case went to the Supreme Court. The court ruled that the Constitution did not specify that all free schools should be only of elementary grade. So this established the right for cities and states to establish high schools and, most importantly, to levy taxes for their construction and maintenance. This really expanded public education in the United States. Even though it continued to expand, and it certainly was in the best interest of the population, there were a lot of problems with the high school curriculum, a lot of tension between what the public wanted, what academe wanted. The public, for the most part, wanted a practical curriculum, something that would prepare their children for jobs in the working world, help them get and maintain a job in a competitive environment, a competitive economy. Higher education, on the other hand, wanted their schools to focus, high schools to focus more on classical curriculum, liberal arts, religion, Greek, Latin, in order to satisfy their entrance requirements. In the late 1800s, colleges were not particularly picky about where their students got their education. as long as they were prepared for college. So it didn't matter, colleges and universities for the most part, whether the students went to a private school, public school, or had a tutor. They were most concerned with having the admissions requirements. By 1899, there was some progress in trying to settle this debate. The Committee on College Entrance Requirements was formed in 1899, and it established a uniform set of standards in terms of important high school subjects, specified the subjects that were important, the amount of work required in proportion, recognized the importance of electives, but also recommended that certain subjects be required of all students. Does that sound familiar? It sounds very much like much of our education, undergraduate education. We realize the importance of electives, but we also understand there must be certain subjects required of every student that holds us together, whether it's in terms of knowledge or culture. But the recommendations led to a 4-year course of study for high school and progress towards standardization of subjects and courses. Other area of progress at this time were what were called normal schools. Normal schools were teacher education programs. By 1897, there were about 92 in the United States, which really shows a demand for quality teaching personnel. The standards for admission to those institutions, however, were very different and much lower than the standards for most liberal arts institutions or higher education institutions. Academically, they really couldn't compete with traditional colleges, universities. The academic standards were somewhere in between that of high school and college. In many cases, they were very inadequately funded, had substandard equipment, particularly books, and the faculty, in many cases, instead of drawing from theory or from research to inform practice, they drew from personal experience, which is not always the best way for us to make decisions. But it did make some important improvements. It did begin to link the study of psychology with education, as I mentioned before. Friedrich Froebel, very important in that, in understanding that children were developmentally different from adults, and they should be treated differently and educated differently because of that. And the importance of well-trained teachers carried over into higher education as well. Some large universities began to develop normal departments, we call teacher education departments. Just before the Civil War and in the late 1800s. Some of these were University of Iowa, University of Wisconsin, Brown, Antioch. Problem, though, with this is that in many cases, the departments were considered by other departments of the university to be of inferior status. They were considered inferior to the disciplines. So there was a lot of tension between departments, and a long time before teacher education departments and programs would be considered intellectually the equal of more traditional departments and programs. So, as usual, you know where to reach me if you have any questions. I think we're just about at the end of the papers. Anything you want to ask, please contact me. I'm always glad to talk with you. Have a good week, everyone. Bye for now.